Good evening. Good evening. I want to welcome you to the 2023 Municipal Candidate Forum for the Town of Southern Shores, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dare County. Thank you all for coming in. I knew we would have a full house, but thank you so much. I am Lorelei DiBernardo, the coordinator for this event this evening. And I'd like to thank you again, as well as obviously the candidates for coming this evening and participating in this event. I want you to know that the forum is going to be videotaped, and we are going to have it available for those who missed it on our website, on our YouTube page, as well as on Current TV. And I hope the Town of Southern Shores posts it as well on their website. The League of Women Voters is celebrating its 103rd anniversary, and I'm really proud of that. And as we continue the tradition of bringing voters like yourselves and the candidates together to better understand, and that's our way of working to empower our voters. I think it's very, very, very important. I will now introduce the moderator for this event tonight. That's Linda McGee. Thank you.
I know that was a thank you for you, dear. Okay. Good evening. I'll participate. Good evening. Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to have this opportunity to be with you tonight, and thank you all for being here this evening. I am a member of the League of Women Voters, and I live in Manteo. I will tell you that it has been our decision over the years not to have someone who lives in this location, to be the person who serves as moderator. So I will be going to the program where I'll be voting tomorrow night in Manteo. The League is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots organization. It encourages informed and active participation in all levels of government. It works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and it influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League maintains a strict nonpartisan policy. It neither endorses nor opposes any political party or candidate. The League participates in the Positive Campaign Project and has requested that each candidate tonight take the Code of Campaign Ethics Pledge. We do not allow campaigning or campaign literature here in this particular meeting. Please turn off all your cell phones, if you will, or your electronic devices, and would appreciate it if you don't text either. So just turn them off, and you can be focused on exactly what these people will be sharing with you tonight. The League members who are participating this evening are the greeters, the people who kindly welcomed you this evening, and who will also retrieve question cards from the members of the audience if you have some to present to them. Those greeters are Judy Lotus and Carol Butcher. The question reviewers are Nancy Baradelli and Audrey Esposito. The timekeeper is Amanda Hooper, and Tony DiBernardo, did you raise your hand? Thank you, dear. Is also assisting with the event this evening. Thank you. We encourage a lively and respectful, and I'm sure it will be, discussion. If you think of a question as you're sitting here during the forum, please raise your hand and we will bring to you a card for you to write down your question, and it will be considered. Sometimes we have repeat questions, so don't be surprised if it's called out and your name is not necessarily addressed to it. It may well be that you're one of 4 or 5 that wanted to hear that same answer, and it will have to be done separately. Let me tell you a little bit about the Southern Shores candidates. There are actually 3 council seats that are up for election on November 7th, and that's an important date. I'm sure all of you know very well that it's the election day, but just in case, we wanted to emphasize that for you. So there are 3 seats that are open, and there are 4 candidates running for those seats. And these gentlemen sitting before you tonight are the ones that are running for those seats. Present this evening for us and as the candidates for the council are, and I have allowed them in advance to pull out numbers so that we make certain that all of our questions are fair and even. And so we will not necessarily be going exactly in the order you see them here because they pulled out their separate numbers. But I will call them out, though, to begin with in that manner. The council members that are incumbents are Mark Kent Batinick, Matthew David Neal. The candidates who are challengers are Robert Edward Nilsson and Michael James Garacino. Now, the format for this evening, I hope I didn't just completely mess up all those names. And if you want to correct me, you're certainly welcome to do so. As a matter of fact, why don't we just go down the table if we might and let you just introduce yourself with your name, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, I'm Mark Batinick.
Thank
That's
you.
okay, you're fine. I've been called many things. Many ways. Please do not be offended.
Oh, I'm not. Thank you.
I'm Matt Neal, and you nailed it.
Okay, thank you. I
Rob
got-
Nielsen, no relation to the ratings.
Oh,
Mike Garacino. The way she said it was closer to the Italian pronunciation, which
Oh,
is
thank you.
Guaracino, but
thank you. Appreciate that. All right. The format for our forum tonight, and many of you have attended them before, either online or here in person, but the format will be pretty much the same that we have done in the past. It's been very successful. This evening, the first step that we have in the process is each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. The timekeeper will signal when the candidate has 30 seconds remaining. The timekeeper will stand when the person has come to the end of their full time frame here. And she is very visible, and she has a card to be able to show you plainly. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from the audience. So please, if you have them, make sure you write them down. We've also received some from the public beforehand, and then we have some that the members of the league themselves have put together. It is important that you sign your question and that you indicate the town that you're in or where your business is located. The league reviewers have reviewed and will be reviewing tonight all questions for clarity and also to avoid duplication if we possibly can. We believe this procedure affords the great variety of subjects. You know, there's lots of different things we want to hear about, and we have limited amount of time. I'll read the question as written, and I'll identify the submitter. Okay. The league advocates positive campaign practices, and we reserve the right to omit any question that is viewed as possibly a personal attack. Questions may be addressed to a specific candidate if you wish to do so, or to all the candidates. But questions directed to a specific candidate can also be answered by the other candidates if they choose to do so. 2 minutes are given for responses to questions, and the timer will signal the candidate when 30 seconds remains, and stand if the candidate continues to answer. If a candidate initially passes up on a question, then they will not be given the opportunity to later answer it. Finally, the third step in the process is that each candidate is entitled to a 2-minute closing statement. I believe all this information has been shared with y'all in advance, right? Before we started, as I said, the candidates drew numbers to establish the order for their opening statements. And we will reverse that order for the closing statements. And we will begin tonight with the opening statement from the candidates. These are in the order, as I said, that we drew earlier. The first opening statement will be made by Mr. Robert Nielsen. Mr. Nielsen?
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters. And most importantly, thank you to Southern Shore's concerned citizens out there who showed up. As a wise sage once said, half a life is just showing up. You folks showed up because you care about the town and its future and want to select the right leadership to ensure its bright future. I commend you for showing up. I love Southern Shores. Let me repeat that. I love Southern Shores. My parents bought a lot here in 1976, and I built a home here on Dogwood Trail in 1989. My children, grandchildren love it here, and my kids want the house after we kick off. That says a lot about the community. They love it here. So what do you do when you love something? You protect it, you nurture it, and you preserve it for the future. So let's peel back the onion and define what is Southern Shores. Listen carefully to the following statement. It's 11 words. Southern Shores is quintessentially a community-minded, single-family residential community. That's 11 words. I'll repeat. Southern Shores is quintessentially a community-minded, single-family residential community. It's a short sentence. And as my crazy uncle, who never graduated from high school, once said, the bad thing about getting old is you get lost in the middle of a short sentence. That 11-word statement is the anchoring statement for my campaign. I've kept it short so we can focus the town's efforts in the near and long term on three concepts mentioned in that statement. So let's take a look at that at more of a granular level. Community-based. Besides the blocking and tackling of functions of local government of providing road systems, zoning systems, code enforcement, fire and police protection, all the necessary things to establish an infrastructure, Southern Shores is unique because it's community-minded volunteer sector. We have to nurture that. Single-family residential. We do not want higher density development. Condos, townhouses. We want single-family home development, unlike Duck, KDH, Kitty Hawk, Nag's Head, where commercial interests and real estate interests trump citizens' interests. And community, we're a group of caring citizens who support one another, and we need to build out infrastructure of parks, sidewalks, cultural events, sports, pickleball. In a town, we need to continually invest in that. And some folks just want to be left alone. I respect that too. In some, I will listen, assess options, and then act in that order. I'm a team player, play well with others, don't have a radical agenda, and I'm not a jerk.
All right, sir. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. We appreciate that. Our second opening statement will be made by Matt Neal. Mr. Neal?
Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming. The civic engagement of this town has always been impressive, and it's one of the continuing legacies of what we have in this town. Also want to thank the league for hosting us. No matter how many times I do this, I get nervous as heck when I sit up here, so I'm going to maybe read, maybe flow through a little bit. Some of you know me, some of you do not. I'm Matt Neal. I'm a business owner and a father and a third-generation resident. I have two children. Ben, age 9, who's at Kitty Hawk Elementary School, and Anna, age 7, who's also at Kitty Hawk Elementary School. They are coming back from a soccer game right now that I had to postpone attending to be here with you tonight. I think they tied, so I'm kind of excited about that. My daughter was not upset about me missing it. She gave me a quick pep talk, so I'm holding strong on that as I come in here. Volunteerism is a strong value in our family, as it is for most folks that live in Southern Shores. I've served on the council for the last 4 years, Mayor Pro Tem for the last 2. My wife is a past president of KHES PTA and currently the treasurer. She's instrumental in hosting that fall carnival that you all see, which is due to embark upon in 2 weeks. My father is currently serving as the president of North Banks Rotary, and my kids have been involved with Lynn planting beach grass down on the beaches. So when I think the other volunteers in this room, I know what it means to give of your time and energy, especially when there are full-time careers and young families in the mix. I'm a little older than I was when I first sat before you in this group. The last 4 years has felt a little bit like a decade, and in many ways, as a collective council, we've achieved a lot, and I personally have learned quite a bit about representing the constituency and problem solving in general. The past 4 years, council started off right out in the first year trying to negotiate a cancellation of our recycling program. We were on a search for a new town manager, and then COVID hit. And that was the first year. When you were first elected, you attend some local government training sponsored by the School of Government. In that class, way back in 2019, I picked up on something that has aided me well. Council leads through the funding priorities. And as a town and council, we've provided strong leadership on that front. We revamped and added funding to our capital improvement plan to tackle our 37 miles of road in a shorter amount of time and at a greater frequency than we ever had in the past, typically about 2,500 feet. We've added significant cost of living adjustments to our pay scale for all town employees, enabling us to recruit and retain the best in Dare County. We've secured tourism board grants for traffic data and walking trails and other community-focused projects. We made a significant improvement to the town hall complex and public works building. I've got 30 seconds, so I'm probably gonna have to circle back to some of this stuff. But we've set in motion a major capital improvement to finally replace the Trinity Trail culvert, which some of you have probably torn up your shocks on. And we did all this while increasing our overall fund balance, as well as increasing our policy for emergency capital reserves. None of this was accomplished by me alone. It takes a team of council members interfacing with manager and staff to lead a town. And I've been honored to serve the citizens and be a part of that team. I ask that you let me serve another 4 years. I will exercise that service with the same integrity, open-mindedness, and work ethic that I have given the past 4 years.
He's gonna throw it at you.
I'm raced, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. We appreciate that. Our third opening statement will be made by Mike Garacino.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, I'm Mike Garacino. I want to thank the League of Women Voters as well as Linda. I want to thank you for doing this and all of you for coming. You know, as Matt said, this is a civic-minded community. It's a community of volunteers. I think we all know that. We have a sign that says it, although I guess it's being fixed, kind of bent or something. Anyway, a little bit about myself. I'm a retired Navy naval officer, Gulf War veteran. I'm also a disabled veteran. Upon leaving the Navy, I went to work for the federal government, where I worked in combating terrorism for a number of years for the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then went on to the Supreme Court of the United States, where I spent my last 19 years in federal government. Part of what I think about all of that is that I've had all these positions of you know, higher and higher levels of government, and I think having worked at the Supreme Court and on the Hill, and with the office of the executive office of the president, there's been a lot of expertise that I've gained when it comes to governmental kind of stuff. One of them is not the partisan or nonpartisanship that you see a lot of government doing today. And that's why I think a nonpartisan board or council rather is an excellent thing. You know, you don't want to get all muddy and bloody like you see going in politics a lot. So I think this is a great thing. I've been working with the town on a number of issues. The milfoil, the Eurasian milfoil, I think everyone's familiar with the weeds. Moving of some channel markers so people have a better way to come in and out and not maybe run their boat aground. I'm a member of the Southern Shore Civic Association on the board. I'm also a member of the Historic Landmark Commission. One thing that I think is very important is that we remain as transparent as possible, as well as, you know, engage with the residents as much as we can, or as much as they want to try to help them address their issues. How much time do I have? I think it's still good. I've been in public service for about 43 years, I guess, ever since I was 17. And so part of when we moved here was I wanted to get back into something. That's why I went to the Civic Association, and that's why I asked to be on the Historic Landmark Commission. A year before I retired, my wife had determined when I was retiring. So she bought me a license with a plate that said OBX 620. So I retired in June of 20. And then we moved here during COVID. I would say that we've been coming down here for 30 years. Prior to that, we owned a mobile home in Kitty Hawk RV and pretty much came down here every weekend. Just came to a point where I kept telling it 256 miles on a Friday and 256 miles on a Sunday was going to be too much. So the name of our home is Our Happy Place. We love it here, and this is a wonderful place to live. Thank you. So you didn't tell me to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Garacino. Appreciate
Thank
that. Our fourth opening statement will be made by Mr. Mark Batanik. Close.
That's good. Thank you, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and it's nice to see everybody here. We were hoping for a full house tonight, and we certainly got it. I might be one of the least known people, Mark Batanik. We lived here since 2007. I was appointed to the council 2 years ago when Elizabeth Morey was elected mayor and it left an opening. And so they asked for applications and I applied. And some reason they chose me out of 14 people. I feel very honored to have that. I have served on a city council before in McLeod, Kansas. Anybody been there? I don't think so. It's in Jefferson County. My wife Kathy and I, this is the longest we've lived in one place in our life. We've lived in 8 different states around the country, never on the West Coast though, but the center of the country and in the South here and in the deep South in Texas, as well as up in Delaware and Pennsylvania. We believe in paying it forward is what we do. We've lived in 9 different communities. We've tried to be members of those communities. I have always tried to give back. When we moved here in 2007 and we bought our first home in KDH in 1982, and we had been transferred from Topeka to the Shenandoah Valley. What a treat. It's beautiful up there. But we always believed in paying it forward, being members of the community, giving back to the community, working in the community, and there's lots of ways to do it. Southern Shores is a community of volunteers. You know, that's what it says on the Southern Shores Civic Association, a community of volunteers. And that's what we want to continue to do. You know, my interest to be on the town council is always to give back to the community. I mean, we're happy to be here. We've served other communities that we've lived in. And I believe that it's my responsibility and our responsibility to give back to where we live and work, and make the place that you live and work the best place you can be. For 15 years, I left this city every Monday and I came back sometimes on the weekend, or I came back 2 weeks later. My job responsibility up until January 1 of 2020 took me all over the country. My office was in Chicago. I was in the grocery business for 55 years. Trust me, a grocers forum of shoppers is much more meaningful than this. It's tougher. They let you know. But we're pleased to be here. But I've had a chance to experience over 50 cultures outside the United States, and the cultures also of 9 states here in this country. This is a unique city here. We have a lot of talent. There's a lot of people here from a lot of parts of the country who've decided to live here, to retire here, to bring their families here. I think if we can harness that power of everybody that's here through the volunteerism, I think this could be the most dynamic place. I think it's the best place on the Outer Banks, and you stood up and I will shut up.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. I appreciate that. Thanks to all of you for your opening statements. I think you shared information that is going to benefit everybody here. I'll mention that there's a couple of seats down toward the front here if anyone would like to come and take those. And also, if you would like to write out a question, now is a good time. Just raise your hand and we'll have someone come and bring a card to you so that you can write out your own question. Okay. All right. The next step in our session this evening is for us to have questions from the public, from you, if you wish to do so. And as I said, there is the possibility that they may be the same question asked by several people, so don't be surprised if your name is not called out to go along with that particular question. And we also have some questions from the league itself. I will be staggering the order of the responses for each question to try to make certain that we're as impartial as we can be. And our first question comes from the league. This is a question for all candidates. Okay. Well, beg your pardon. It says it's for all candidates, but the first question also says, if you are a challenger, please describe why you're running. If you are an incumbent, please describe why you feel you should be reelected. Okay. Let me get my sheet here. The first person who will be answering this particular question is Matt Neal.
This is a difficult question for me to answer sometimes because you have to ask why you all should put me back up here to continue to lead this town as a councilman. And sometimes I don't have a straightforward answer. I always feel like it's a self-promotional answer and I kind of trip over it at times, but what I like and what I'm good at is policy. And I appreciate working with policy, and I appreciate working with the town's budget and managing all of your resources that you send our way that we need to send back to you. And I think we've been pretty good stewards of that over the last 4 years. And I feel like there's still some stuff that we haven't quite finished. When we embarked upon being elected, we started updating the land use plan. That still hasn't been adopted. I would like to fulfill that, and we're just months away from achieving that goal. Continuing to fund and seek beach nourishment resources, I think, is another thing that I would like to continue to be a part of. The other thing that I really feel like I offer as an asset to y'all is we are increasingly faced with mandates from above. And what I mean by that is state government putting things upon us that we have to accept as a town. And through business relationships, trade relationships, and overall lobbying efforts that have been made in the past, I can make some relationships at the state level and get our voice at the county and at the state and have some representation. I've already pushed back on some bills this year that was going on largely behind the scenes that thankfully have never made it out of committee, but they'll probably come back forward again. And that's what I really want to be here to help the town navigate. And I think that's the unique thing that I might be able to offer.
Thank you, sir. The next answer will be made by Mr. Garacino.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I have 43 years prior public service, and I feel like I still have a lot to give. I have a lot of, as Matt mentioned, I've done a lot of work in policy as well, and I think that's very important. I've been in both situations where we mandated down how you do stuff, and I've been on the other side where it's been mandated down to us, and sometimes you have to just kind of figure out how to do that. I've done a lot of work in developing partnerships as well when I was in the federal government, especially at the court with state, local, and other federal partners. Partnerships are very important to try to build. Absent that, sometimes you're just the hand of one hand clapping, which doesn't make a sound. As I said, I've spent my entire adult life in public service, and I really think that the expertise, knowledge, skills, and abilities that I've gained through that, I can be a good addition to the council. I got to say the council's been doing a great job, so I got to give Matt a little prop here. But the council has been doing a great job. I just think that me on the council, if I'm elected to the council, I could be a great addition to.
Thank you, sir. Our next answer will come from Mr. Botanic.
Thank you. It's been an honor, like I said earlier, to be on the council for the last 2 years. It's been an immense learning curve. And as said before, we have to continue to be on top of what we're doing. I've read the book by Frank Stick, and the values of this town are solid. But we ought to keep those values solid, but also modernize it as well and make sure that the decisions we make follow that vision to a degree, but also are modern. By modern, I mean up to date. I've been known to be an intense listener, make my decisions based on facts, make sure we're following the rules, the ordinances, and the laws that are in the town, and make sure they're applied fairly. And that's where I think we all have to keep that into account. Once you make a decision, the most informed decision that you can possibly make, you put it out there. Will it please everybody? No, it's impossible to please everybody. Having spent 55 years in the grocery business, I can tell you it's impossible to please everybody, okay? But you do the best that you can with the most informed decisions you can make, gathering the information. I like to get behind the scenes and find out what's going on. We have an amazing town staff here. I've gotten to know them in the last 2 years. They really do a great job helping them to do their jobs better for the citizens of this town, to keep them safe, to keep them happy, to keep them healthy, and to put forward everything else that we're trying to do. I think that's one of the reasons I want to continue to serve on the council and pay it forward and give back.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. And our next answer will come from Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you. I've spent 40 years in the public sector as a senior executive general officer equivalent, and also as a professor and department chair at the National Defense University. Academically, I have a PhD in public administration and public policy from the University of Southern California, master's of Public Administration from the University of Georgia, and a BA in U.S. Government from Norwich University, the oldest private military college in the United States. Also, I'm a grad at the Industrial College of the Armed Forces, which studies resource strategy and logistics. So how does that all apply? Really, the council is, in essence, like a legislative body. It is a policy-making body, and the town staff executes the policy. So therefore, I can bring, I think, to the council a whole different dimension of policy analysis, and then also try to anticipate the intended result and also the unintended result. And the point that somebody made, I think one of the other gentlemen here, the state is really trying to take a lot of power away from local decision makers here. And I think, as a community, we have to watch out for that. And, making relationships at the county and the state level is important. But I think, you also have to play hardball every once in a while with good, solid policy analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Appreciate all your answers. Now we'll go to our second question. It's also from the League. What do you see as the most pressing issue that is facing the town of Southern Shores? And how would you approach this issue if elected or re-elected? Any question about the question? Okay. Our first answer will come from Mr. Garasino.
I think the most important issue in the town of Southern Shores is maintaining the critical infrastructure and monitoring those kind of issues. We did the beach nourishment, or the town did the beach nourishment recently. That needs to continue to be monitored. The streets are an issue. I know that, repair of streets and that kind of thing needs to be maintained. The bringing in of fiber. I know that the company Ribble, it used to be, I guess, Open Fiber, is bringing fiber in eventually. At least that's the plan that I've heard. They're in Kitty Hawk now. I guess Southern Shores would be next. That kind of thing, I think, will help the town significantly, especially if you look at the competition, even for your internet. So if there's a fiber and you can get someone like a Verizon or an AT&T or whoever to challenge Spectrum, that might also help a lot of people, because having one in the market's a monopoly other than people streaming. So I would say the number one issue is infrastructure. The town has, again, been doing a really good job of kind of staying on that, and the budgeting process has been real good, and I read the budget, and the budget's lean and mean. And so I would just say that has to be continued, and that's it.
Thank you. The answer that will come next is Mr. Botanic.
Thank you. I think the most pressing issues that are going through the town, number one, is keep the taxes as low as possible. Your citizens, you're paying, I'm paying, we're all paying. We want to keep them as low as possible and as reasonable while providing the most up-to-date services for the citizens that are within the budget. I think that's what one of our responsibilities is. We're also looking forward to the future. I think if you haven't had a chance to read the land use plan that all of you had a chance to participate in as we updated it, the comment section is almost 50 pages, 50 separate pages. We had an enormous response to the survey. Read the land use plan. It follows the values of the town, and it tells us it's a path forward for the way we need to go. Okay, keeping those taxes as low as possible, and following the land use plan. And the other issue is the infrastructure. We're working on the bridge over Trinity Trail. It's a bump. I go over it every day, multiple times. A lot of people do. Don't go over 15. Don't pay attention to that sign that says 25. So, that's one thing. We have a street plan when I got on the council that I thought was very well thought out, and I supported it. Okay, and we're spending over $1 million a year on the streets in the town. It's in the budget. And the other thing is we got a nice reserve. Okay, and we're making plans and we're putting money aside as we can so that when situations arise that could be emergencies, we're going to be prepared. I think those are the most crushing issues right now, and we'll get to there in 10 seconds. 15. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. The next answer will come from Mr. Nielsen.
local government is about, I think all politics are local, and they talk about filling potholes with local government. You got to be responsive to the citizens. That's one of the immediate priorities. The old blocking and tackling of local government is, maintaining the infrastructure, road systems, zoning systems, and everything else. We have a shortage of policemen in this town, patrolmen. We've got to be able to, attract people here and be able to, fully fill out the force. The whole notion of supporting our volunteer organizations is huge because they provide an inordinate amount of labor and services. If we don't foster it, guess what? The town is going to have to do a lot of those functions, and that is going to be more expensive. So, fostering that is huge. And we need to recognize those organizations. I think also, besides the infrastructure, maintaining the canals, the beaches, beach nourishment is huge. I think an issue for the future is also going to be water quality. And that's going to kind of come up and sneak up and kind of bite us in the rear end, in the near future. So with that, I think I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
I have the land use plan draft here in front of me. It's that thick, and I think the last quarter of it is comments. And about every other phrase is infrastructure and congestion and growth. And I think these things are all kind of tied together. The infrastructure, I think there's a strong plan of attack to go after it. There's still some isolated stormwater pockets, not isolated, but there's some stormwater pockets that I think we need to figure out a way to tackle. And we've already embarked upon that. I think the land use plan and its current incarnation and the last incarnation of the last several iterations of it tackles the growth. We are 1,500 acres of single family residential and 53 acres of commercial. That's the way the town wants it. That's the way most of you have settled here, and that's the way that it needs to stay. And the council needs to be on their toes, and I think they have been historically, but to manage that growth as it occurs and keep the densities the way they're currently prescribed, not change them, and continue forward. And infrastructure is impacted by that growth, and we need to keep up with it. And I wouldn't say it was neglected. The town has always run very lean with your tax dollar, and we always will. But we've really tackled it in a different manner now, and been able to hit more projects more frequently. One little victory that I think we had that might not mean a lot to all of you, but it means a lot to the staff that works for you, is the public services building was in terrible shape when I took office, and we made it a funding priority. And if you go over now, that staff is as happy as can be in the heat of the summer, when otherwise they were just cooking themselves to death. So it's small things like that make this a better community for everybody.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. All right. Our third question: what is your position on the proposed Saga development in Southern Shores near the foot of the Wright Memorial Bridge? And this is from Robert Healy. Mr. Botanic, you get the opportunity to start with the
I
answers.
didn't hear the last part of the question. I'm sorry.
Sorry. What is your position? Sorry. What is your position on the proposed Saga development in Southern Shores near the foot of the Wright Memorial Bridge? Okay, and that's from Mr. Robert Healy. And you, sir?
I don't have a position at this time. I haven't seen all the facts. They haven't been presented to the council, sitting on the council, and until that time, we really can't make a decision or give you an opinion one way or the other. But the applicant has made application. It's in front of the planning board right now. They had their first meeting. If you watched it, it was 2 hours and 37 minutes long. It was on YouTube.
Yep.
In 16 seconds. And so we are, when it gets to our when it gets to the city council, when it does, we'll review all the facts, take into the recommendations that the town management makes, that the planning board makes, and then make an informed decision based on that. Now, there's no question that there's a lot of emotion around this development that's going on there. And a lot of conditions have been made, if you listen to the video by town management on what has to be met. And the planning commission hasn't even gone through all of that yet to put in their recommendations. So at this time, I mean, I'll just tell you, I don't have an opinion right now. I'll look at the facts fairly. They have to be part of the ordinances. They have to follow the ordinances, follow the laws of the city. And if they meet all those requirements, we'll make a decision then. That's my position.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic.
Mhm.
Our next answer will come from Mr. Nielsen.
I think Mark gave a very good summary, but the town manager sent out a memo to all of the candidates. And he basically said that the town council will almost become a quasi-judicial decision-making body. And to bias any sort of decision now would be inappropriate and may set you up for a lawsuit later on. In other words, they will say, hey, you in a public forum, you came out and basically said, no, we're not going to evaluate all the facts. We're not going to evaluate all of the data. We have a predetermined opinion before we get into this. So I think Mark, as a member of the town council, was very good in terms of saying, we have to take it in, make sure that it is in compliance with all our ordinances, and that otherwise we'll probably get a big lawsuit too, and it depends on how much tax dollars you want to spend on legal fees, to get into a case where hopefully our town attorney said, well, you could win or not win, I don't know. But so therefore, I think my initial statement opening up was the town is, I think, basically a single-family residential community, and we don't want dense development. That's an overall statement. Getting into specifics with Saga, I think, may put us in legal jeopardy.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Our next answer will be from Mr. Neal.
Just to reiterate what's already been said, essentially, if we stake a position at this moment, we'll have to recuse ourselves.
Right.
Three of us will be going before council, and three of the council recuses themselves, and it's a difficult vote when the public hearing actually occurs.
Right.
I do think that it's safe to comment in two ways. We've got the land use plan. This is the draft, hasn't been adopted. It's very similar in concept to our land use plan and our density allocations that we've had historically through town for some time. And that's a guiding document for us and for the planning board. And secondly, I would like to just really commend, we have a member of the planning board in the room, maybe two. They're going to do an incredible job reviewing this, and they're going to protect you. They're the first line of defense to make sure that the land use plan is instrumented in the way that it needs to be, and that our rules are followed. And once they present their findings to us and they'll give us a recommendation, then we'll have the chance to adjudicate using the same guiding documents. And that's probably as far as I really want to go. But I mean, they're there and they're good documents, and you all should trust in those documents.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Garacino?
Well, my three friends here didn't leave me much to add to this. And
That's
I
why we're
appreciate
random.
that. But I do agree with everything they just said, so my only response to that is ditto.
All right. Thank you, sir.
No timekeeper.
Our next question. During the summer rental season, how would you address the huge, all capital letters, traffic problem that the residents of Southern Shores have to endure? We have paid for several different studies and traffic counts with no change. And this was submitted in advance by Victoria Green. Any question about the question? You want me to read it again? I'm happy to. Y'all have heard that a bit before? Okay. All right. The first answer will come from Mr. Nielsen.
Traffic. I am the recipient of the traffic. I live on South Dogwood Trail, and if I want to get out and get my mail on a Saturday, there's a cohort of cars that come through, and then you know the light changed. And then you run out and you get your mail, and then you get back in before you get hit by a car. The real problem is, and the choke point in military terminology, is duck. So that's where the problem really lies. And I think right now, Duck doesn't want to play nice with us. There's 17 crosswalks, I think, in Duck, if I'm not mistaken, and people and the business interests don't want to limit the people crossing the street, so therefore, everything backs up. The town has tried, I don't know how many different, methods to alleviate traffic, from no left turns to barriers, suggestions of gates coming down and whatever else. And the one that I think is probably the method that might help the most is getting with all the mapping services, meaning Waze and others, to say, don't cut through. Don't cut through. But I mean, we're also limited because it's a state dedicated road and people can actually, drive through it. Building the Mid-Currituck Bridge is probably, one of the only ways possibly in the long term of mitigating traffic. There have been citizens groups who have kind of come up with some alternatives. The other day, people talked about speed bumps, approach me. In the UK, they call speed bumps sleeping policemen, so the whole point is temporary speed bumps. Can you put them in just to have it in for the weekend? But there's a cost associated with that because guess what? Somebody's got to put them in and take them out, on every weekend. So it's almost an intractable problem.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. The next answer will be from Mr. Neal.
So this is definitely an oldie but goodie. And I remember being here 4 years ago, thinking I was going to hard charge into it and fix the problem. And after experimenting for 3 years, I'm not sure that we got too far. We had some initial success with the no left turn signal at the light. Our partner, Kitty Hawk, felt that was a non-valid thing for them to continue to partake with us. So we had to draw that back. We moved to physical barricades within town. Very, very mixed results from the response from you all. There are probably some other physical barricade things that could be experimented with. And I think the answer is how much more do you want to be experimented with? We shifted gears. We met with Waze, was instrumental in getting some of those sit downs and getting Waze to take our roads off their navigation. In conversations with some of those individuals at Waze, Google owns Waze, but they don't talk and they're not friends and they're tech companies and all this other stuff. But Google steals Waze's information and they're mapping routes. So eventually, theoretically, some of this stuff is supposed to focus through to Google. So, I mean, there's two tracks. We can keep going physical barricades. We can keep trying to experiment different things. I have a different perspective. Perhaps when I put myself in this traffic 3 times this summer, leaving from the Crown Station or the BP, whatever gas company they're selling now, all the way to Duck, it actually loosens up. You get past 13th Avenue, you'd be surprised how fast you move north, and you'll be in Currituck in another 20 minutes. So I think it's our lights. And if you all want to experiment with keeping that light red at Hillcrest and Sea Oats and barricading 11th, go for it. But this is something where we need feedback from y'all because we get yelled at from every which angle. And frankly, I'm willing to try anything, but also sometimes the less harm you do is the best action. So it's not a satisfactory answer, but I got 30 seconds. I could go on and on. So.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Garacina?
Yeah, well, here I go again. I'm going to have to give Matt another prop. Him and Cliff going to Waze was, I think, a very significant. Was very significant in actually reducing the amount of traffic. When we first moved here, it was stopped. I mean, I had to come out of the house one day. I retired from the Supreme Court, as I said, but I retired as a federal law enforcement. I had to come out, believe it or not, with my retired badge just to stop traffic so she could get out. I mean, it was that bad when we first moved here. This year has not been nearly as bad. There's still a lot of traffic. And yes, Duck's the issue. And I know that the council's talked to Duck in the past, and Duck doesn't really want to change their ways. They don't really want to change the way that they're doing business there with all the crosswalks and moving down to 25 miles an hour. I also think that the lights are a problem. Even the one that's at South Dogwood, you sit there forever, right? Trying to go out that way, back to 158. And the one at Hillcrest is another one that just sits there forever. So if you have traffic trying to merge back into 12, they're going to keep backing up. So Other than that, I think the town has done a great job on trying things, and I know that the council's been maybe berated or yelled at or criticized
It's all-
about trying all their different, processes, whether it was barricades or whatnot. And of course, it's real hard because people are like, why aren't the police stopping them? Well, the police really don't have the authority to be ticketing people that are driving down there when it's a public road. So, good on you, Matt and Cliff. That's something that just has to be looking at. And I think the lights could help a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Garacino. Our next person is Mr. Botanic.
Oh, I think it's been said well. One of the things I wrote down here was make summer traffic as painless as possible. And I know that that's almost impossible, and I haven't been a resident here now for 17 years. I get it. I remember when it was stopped clear out here, and you had traffic policemen at the junction there, I call it, directed traffic to keep them out of the center lane. It hasn't been easy, but the council has embarked on a lot of things. We were the initiators, thanks to Paula Sherlock, who's one of our council members, in getting an America's Brief going as a friend of the court. And we enlisted the support of Duck, and we enlisted the support of the other towns here and Dare County to help us. And we got Currituck County, she did, okay, to help on the America's Brief. And the 4th District ruled against the Southern Poverty Law Center on that. And so the bridge can be built. Our mayor has worked closely with the rental companies to try to shift some of the rentals from Friday to Sunday, Saturday, to take some of that heat off of Saturday. I mean, it's really, really difficult to try to get the traffic moving. I've seen the mayor out, and I've been out myself on Saturdays on my bike. I'm fortunate to live on Pojiki Trail, where we don't get that traffic, but we do get a little bit on Juniper and on Trinity. So we've tried everything we know how to do to make it as painless as possible. We've even moved the pain by moving the barriers a couple times, and that was disastrous. And so, and then the look of the town when you have these barriers up doesn't say welcome. I mean, that's an aesthetic, I know, but what it is, we'll continue to try to make it as painless as possible. And if I have a chance to come back on the city council, we'll work to make it as painless as possible. But we're doing everything we can, working with the rental companies, helping with them, putting the signs up, stay on 12, you'll get there faster, and that's true. It does loosen up once you get past 13th Street. I noticed that this summer several times when I was out. But let's, hopefully that bridge will be built in our lifetime. I hope so.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. Our next question. Recent legislation to remove the height and depth requirements for buildings in Dare County was recently passed by the state legislature. How will we prevent this from happening? And that is from Nellie Healy. Want me to read that again? Everybody, shall I read it again? Recent legislation to remove the height and depth requirements for buildings in Dare County was recently passed by the state legislature. How will we prevent that from happening? Mr. Neal, you get the opportunity to start this one.
This is one of those items that I brought up previously. I think you're referring to the budget provision that was slipped into the budget in the early morning hours of a debate at our state legislature. What it specifically does is it suspends zoning authority for a town. It doesn't just touch height and size, but it suspends zoning authority for the town for any project initiated by a county-led affordable housing initiative. So they have no setbacks, no lot coverage restrictions, no height restrictions, no density restrictions. It is very scary. And it's a sledgehammer to fix a problem. And it has a method of shortchanging any potential valid dialogue that could be had with all parties, because it's an offensive move. And the relationships that need to be built to forestall something like that is some of what I've talked about. I've been on the phone on this particular issue for 3 weeks, almost solid, maybe not full 3 weeks. It's very similar to another bill that was going to be statewide that was put forward about 6 months ago that didn't make it out of committee. This is separate from the other bill I was talking about. How are we going to prevent this? I think it's through relationships and lobbying. And yes, at times you need some teeth. And for some reasons, I'd like to leave it at that for this moment. So, thank you. There's more to be said, but I'd rather leave our options open.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Botanic?
Well, it's a very interesting question. And that piece of the legislation got into the appropriations bill for the state, only for Dare County only, no other county. Okay? And nobody knows how it got there.
Well, you know,
Your legislators don't know it. The ones who represent you here, your state senator doesn't know how it got in there. Your county manager doesn't know how it got in there, and the head of the county, Mr. Woodard, doesn't know how it got into who put it in there? Who put it in there? We don't know. I really don't care. But what we have to do is we have to figure out how to work around it. And the cities in this community and in Dare County are not happy. And I can tell you, the bodies, the councils in the other towns, we're talking. I don't know what we're going to do, but we can't let that happen because it's like a bulldozer. I mean, they're taking away our ability to have a great community. When you take that away from the citizens, it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right. And we can't figure out how it got in there. It's surprising. I guess. I mean, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. Our next answer from Mr. Nielsen.
This reminds me of an old TV show. Do you remember Hogan's Heroes?
No.
Hogan's Heroes, basically, Sergeant Schultz said, I know nothing. You ask, who put this provision into the state budget? And no one, the county folks, the other municipalities up and our two representatives at the state and the House level, they're going, I really don't know. There's probably some good ideas of who actually got it in, and it may not be one of your elected representatives. But this is the opposite of devolution, meaning getting decision-making authority back to local government. This is the opposite of that. This is the centralization of power. And guess what? Dare County's been singled out. Yes, I agree with Mark and that, you have to fight this, and you're going to have to fight it at the state level, and have to have a united effort with all of the communities, up and down the beach. And be able to fight it so we can go back to our citizens and say, no, we control our own destiny here. And if we want to limit height and depth requirements, we're going to do that. So right now, it's a little bit unclear.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, so about a year ago, Bobby Hayner came and did a talk at the one of the Southern Shore Civic Association GAMs. So I could probably tell you how this might have got it. And when he was there, one of the things, he talked about three things. One, he talked about the Mid-Currituck Bridge and how that's been funded, and as soon as it got to the Fourth Circuit, which it did, they could start. The other two things were that because Dare County is a rural area by definition, a lot of the services that they need, they can't get. And part of the reason they can't get them is also because people can't afford to live here. A lot of people who work here live in, Elizabeth City and that kind of stuff. I don't agree with having to force the, Southern Shores of the county to have to do zoning for affordable housing for people who work here. I'm just saying that's probably how it got in there, because he had talked about that very issue about how they were looking at affordable housing as being a significant thing for Dare County generally. Other than that, I don't think that it'll really play well if we get forced to have to start building duplexes and stuff like this so people can live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I say something
Garcia.
else?
Yes, sir.
Am I allowed to say it? Matt said something here about a bill that was introduced about 6 months ago that we found out about. And fortunately, it didn't make it out of committee. Pay attention to what they're doing. And it was really scary. And that was statewide, where they could, the intention of the bill was that you could put up a small house on your property,
Mhm.
anybody could, without regard to traffic or setbacks or anything.
Right.
Unfortunately, it didn't get out of committee. And so my point here is we just have to be cognizant of everything that's going on and just be students of that, okay? So that's all we have to do. Is that right, Leo? You can't
Yeah.
hear? Okay, all right, sorry.
Suggesting
I don't
everybody
have my hearing aid in.
talk directly into their mic if you wouldn't mind, so that we can
Thank you.
all hear, the good information that you're sharing with us.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Anyone else want to take a quick comment about that matter? All right. Our next question is to all the candidates. What is your perspective or ideas on or about the shortage of medical providers here at the Outer Banks? In parentheses, it says, even though this may not be an issue directly under the purview of the town council. And this is from Carol McConaughey. Shall I read that one again? I'm sorry, I think I've sort of butchered it. To all candidates, what is your perspective on or ideas about the shortage of medical providers here at the Outer Banks, even though it may not be directly under the purview of the town council? Mr. Botanic, you get the opportunity to begin.
Great. What the heck? You know, I watched with interest what would happen in Manio. And if you look at what happened in Manio when the single provider over there, family physician, retired, and they, 1,000 people were without a physician. And East Carolina Health, I believe, or Vidant, I don't know what they're called now. I think it's East Carolina Health, came to the rescue, and the community spoke up over there. It was played out well in the newspapers, I think, in the Coastland Times, and it actually made the Virginia Pilot as well. If something like that happened farther up the beach here, I think activity like that, where the community really came together, we would have to do something. I don't have an easy answer. We have to go off island for medical care. But we do have a good ENT guy here. We have a family practice medicine here, but if you have a specialty, you have to go off island here. There's no question about it. And we do that. So I know there's a new eye doctor coming at Albemarle Eye, and she's living in Nags Head, and she's being credentialed right now. I viewed that as very positive. The only reason I know that is I had my cataracts out in August. Okay, but I view that as terribly positive because we've been out with eye care down there for a while. So we can do that. There are some PAs and nurse practitioners coming in, okay, who are monitored by a doctor, but that is one of the good things that can happen is more PAs and more nurse practitioners to help us out.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. Mr. Garcina?
This is a big issue with the number of medical providers here and specialists. There aren't very many. If you need a hand surgeon, you got Jeff McCorney. He can fix that for you. Plastic surgery. You got some good orthopedists, but they're very limited in what they do. Knees, shoulder, back, that kind. I had my neck done. Two of my cervical discs fused 2 years ago, and I had to go to Virginia Beach. We just don't have the population of medical folks to take care of that stuff. The other problem here, of course, is waiting lists. How many people here have tried to get on a waiting list to go see a doctor? If you're not in with one, wait a while. If you are in with one, stay there because the waiting list, I talked to my nurse practitioner because I see one of those as my primary care. She said she has 1,100 people that she sees a year. That's her list. That's why they can't get anybody in. This is not easy. I mean, obviously Southern Shores itself is not going to be able to take care of this. It's really going to have to be more with the county. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier. This was part of what Bobby Hanick was talking about is trying to attract medical people here, probably through that affordable housing thing, which again, really taking and having us forced on what zoning would be, would just dilute the way the county and the town is. So I don't have an answer how you get more doctors. Drive to Chesapeake, I guess. I mean, we're really stuck. And as people say, welcome to the beach. It's a great place to live, and it's true, but you have to sometimes sacrifice one or two kind of things like that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Garcina. Mr. Neal?
When I was a kid, before I was a kid, used to joke you might be born on the path to Elizabeth City. So luckily, my sister and I both made it to Elizabeth City to be born, but subsequently we had our two children there as well. But this has been an ongoing thing for our community. I think we've attracted greater and better healthcare services now than we ever have. They're building a new cancer facility in Nags Head that is top of the art. They've invested quite a bit of money in the facilities over in Kitty Hawk. That's been pretty successful. I think what they're really lacking in the medical side is the public sector part of this, but there's the private sector, but there's a public sector side with teachers and police officers, and it really comes down to housing affordability, which kind of circles back to the previous thing where the state's trying to ram it down our throat. And what can Southern Shores do? I don't remember seeing a commercial use for a hospital in our use table. I don't think it's there. But we can engender these conversations as a larger community and get our voice and get some working groups together. I do think on the healthcare issue, there's already some really solid progress, but they keep bucking up against housing. And I just think we are one municipality among many in this county, and we have a neighboring sister county that has some similar issues, and we just need to get everybody together in a group and talk these issues through.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Nielsen?
I wish Ronnie Sloan was here for the president of the Outer Banks Hospital, or now Outer Banks Health, to address this issue. He knows more than anyone else, but affordability housing is huge. I think the hospital is trying to get an oncologist to come in. The new cancer center, we have two people in the room right now who are on the development council who raised over $6 million to put that together. And that's going to open up in January. And there will be more medical personnel associated with that. There will be further nurse practitioners. There will be nurse navigators. There will be more technicians. There will be the own pharmacy in there. It'll have its own radiation will be in there. So in other words, cancer is a huge issue on the beach. And you don't have to go off the beach now to be able to get some of those services. But the whole notion, again, is a lot of temporary local people come in, and I think the hospital provides some sort of lodging for them down in Pirates Cove, if I'm not mistaken. And again, the physicians who want to come in, especially those who are young, can't afford homes here. And therefore, they say, well, it's a great place. I want to be at the beach. I want to be able to serve the community, but I can't afford to live here. Yes, the whole notion of having a PA and getting more PAs in here is huge, and trying to attract them is also problematic from a housing perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Our next question is to everyone. Would you support an ordinance to prevent clear cutting on lots? If not, why not? And this is from Ann. Thank you, ma'am. And the first person that has the opportunity to speak on this one is Mr. Nielsen.
You have to balance the notion, I think, of individual property rights with the notion also of what are community standards and restrictive covenants, so to speak. I think, I'm kind of the opinion that you should be able to do reasonable amount of clear cutting if you so desire, so you don't, preventing trees from falling on your house and, a couple of big hurricanes. Yes, you should not be permitted to have runoff to go into your neighbor's yard or whatever else, or some sort of public right of way. But especially live oaks, there may be an exception for those, to be able to keep them, since that is an old growth maritime forest tree. And preserving those is in character with the community. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You got to balance individual property rights with, maintaining a maritime forest and keeping the cover, so to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. The next person, Mr. Botanic.
Great again. Okay.
Second that time.
Yeah, thank you. I have mixed feelings. When you own the property, you can do what you want, but when you present your house plan to the planning board for the CPOA and the Southern Shore Civic Association, then you put a ribbon around the trees that you're going to save. And then when you watch them bulldoze them, you're going, who's in charge here? Okay. And I've seen that happen multiple times. Now I have two huge, in the front yard, but we kept every tree we could because that's what attracted us to this community. I mean, and when we bought our first house in 2000 on Ocean View Loop. And so I mean, the live oaks there are absolutely magnificent. They really are. And we kept 2 large gumball trees to annoy our neighbor across the street who didn't like them. Okay? Some of you know some of you know Carl Cito, okay? He ate some, and my wife made a wreath out of them for him, okay? Just to help him out. Kathy did. So my point here is it's the property rights, and I came on the council 2 years ago, all hepped up about no clear cutting, and the mayor said, okay, you want a tree ordinance, huh? And I said, I hadn't thought of that, Elizabeth. And I think it's something that we ought to investigate. That's what I'm saying. Am I for it? I'm torn. You got property rights, but when you say you're going to save the tree and then you don't save the tree when you're building, I think the builders sometimes talk the new homeowners into clear cutting because it's cheaper. Okay, it keeps their costs down. I get it. Okay, but it's a tough question. So I'm on the fence.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. Next answer will be from Mr. Garasino.
Thank you. Well, I would first have to, with the Southern Shores Civic Association, there are literally like 90 different areas of covenants that cover Southern Shores. For those of you who didn't know that, it's like one is on this block, then there's one here, then there's one here. And somewhere in some of these, I'm sure there's talking about tree cutting or not tree cutting. I like the preservation of green space. I mean, I think it's great that we have trees. In fact, when my wife and I first were looking at Southern Shores, I got confused in the sense that I'm like, am I still at the beach? Okay, because it's much different than the rest of all of Dare County. You come here and it's like, wow, look at this. This is great. And I said, is there a beach? Where's the water? And finally you stumble upon and go, yeah, there it is. There it is. So like Mark, I'm kind of torn on whether you'd even want to tackle an ordinance that says you can or can't because of the property rights issues, like you said. But I would tell you that I'm more in favor of maintaining more green space. I'd hate to see the place just be decimated.
Thank you, Mr. Garasino. Mr. Neal?
So I just want to get the record out there. It is a lot more expensive to clear cut a lot than
Yeah.
to just remove a selected amount of trees. A lot more. When you're paying per load and you're paying per tree,
Them-
it costs you more every time. Pulling out more root ball, you got to put more material back in. And as a builder, I try to save every tree. And I've been yelled at twice. Once about 2 years ago, somebody was so angry they emailed council about this evil builder that was clear cutting a lot.
Did you?
And it was in that particular individual situation, I will not throw my owner under the bus, but they wanted those gumball trees taken down, and they were black gums. They weren't so bad anyway. And this is going down to the property right of the owner and their choice. I have not seen a vegetation ordinance that functions very well on the ground. It's very restrictive to write language. It says, is it a 2-inch caliber tree, 6-inch, preserve the setbacks, that just every lot, especially the remaining lots, have uniquities to them that are very difficult to write something very specifically that's going to handle it. And a story about a town manager in a neighboring town that did have a live oak ordinance. He was manager for many, many years. Insisted on the ordinance, put the ordinance in place. Well, about 25 years goes down. He's no longer manager. He's got this live oak that's encroaching upon his front piling and damaging the front deck, and he can't get it taken down. My point of it is the rigidness of some of these vegetation ordinance. Duck has a fairly rigid one on the books. It's a little unwieldy for them from an execution standpoint. And then, so that's the practical side. The other side is I hate to keep throwing the state under the bus, but tree ordinances are something that is a right that has to be given by the state, and only like 6 municipalities in the state have it currently. So if we were to pass one, there would be some legal battle with that as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Our next question is for everyone. What are your plans to create more parks and open space for youth in the town? This is from Ethan Slegel. And the first person that gets to respond to this one is Mr. Garasino.
So first of all, the town doesn't actually own any of the amenities like that. Southern Shores Civic Association does. So it's really a question to the Civic Association because there's not a lot of property for the town to develop. If you think of the Civic Association in terms of being sort of a quasi Parks and Rec, if you would, for the town of Southern Shores, that's what they are. About 1,890 people in Southern Shores. Actually, it's 1,891 because I'm on the board and I just happened to look it up. 1,891 residents of Southern Shores are in the Civic Association. So all the parks, the new pickleball, the marinas, all of that is Southern Shores Civic Association properties. So when it came to the town, there's not much other than the town talking to the Civic Association and seeing what they might like to do. But a lot of what they do is actually from the memberships of the Civic Association and not the town proper. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garacino. Mr. Neal?
Where's Ethan? Is he in there? It's a very good question, Ethan. Thank you for asking it. There was a nice green space the SSCA had that the kids love to play on. It's become a pickleball court in the near future. And I think
Get me started.
I could go off the Saga development property. Somebody mentioned to me many years ago, we should have bought that as a town when it was for sale dirt cheap. And I think that kind of thinking is probably the forward progress for the town, is we need to look at these properties that might be difficult to develop, might be something we don't want to develop, and actually acquire them as some of our neighboring towns does and convert them to park space for the kids. And not just for the kids, everybody. But I mean, it's we maybe we've done well financially. I've spoken of it recently. We have the ability to purchase these properties if they're available, and I think we should work on it as a long-term capital goal for us. And I know that's something the mayor has thought for a long time. We own the lot right back here, and we thought about potentially options of community garden. That one is a little bit isolated in terms of we were questioning how much use it would have. And where it's sandwiched inside of things, but I think the potential is there, and I think it would be a noble goal for the town, Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Nielsen?
I agree with Matt. There are potentially some infill commercial lots that the town may want to purchase, and we may not have to go through the whole issue of denser development like we are potentially doing with Saga right now if we purchase those pieces of land. And whether they turn them into parks or something else. There might be another opportunity here for a public-private partnership. The marketplace just recently turned over. And who the new owners, Klein Enterprises or something like that, approach them. And, maybe it's just even a little green space. Maybe it's a gazebo. Maybe it's something that, can become a focal point for the town, for its citizens to gather. And make it a win-win situation for the commercial concerns here. And then connecting up, the two different shopping centers. That kind of thing would be interesting, to be able to get flow back and forth. And I think that would be a worthwhile endeavor. Whether they want to play with us, who knows? We don't know. But unless you approach them and bring something up and then maybe put together a scenario of how it would benefit both parties, it's huge. Once again, as Mike mentioned, Southern Shores Civic Association owns a lot of the parkland infrastructure, boating, and whatever else. And they, like Will Rogers once said, land, they don't make any more of it.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. And the last question
Well, thank you.
will be answered by Mr.
I
Patel.
couldn't agree more. I think that it's been well said. I mean, if there's a way to do that, the town just bought the house next to the lot here. The flat top, it's historic. I mean, we're looking forward in that. We can't go back and buy that lot that we should have bought in front of the water there, but we just can't do that right now. But I think where those opportunities become available, we have to look at it for green space.
Please talk into your mic, sir. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think we need to be, we're cognizant that, we bought the home over here, the flat top, and we haven't quite decided what to do with it, but we knew it was right. It is part of the campus here. It reminds me kind of, we lived in South Lake, Texas. It's between Dallas and Fort Worth, and the town was growing when we grew there, and they started with a gazebo. It's funny you say that, Ron. And they started with a gazebo, and the whole town was built around that. I know we can't do that here, but something like that where we encourage that. we encourage the green space and for people to keep their trees, plant more shrubs, and so it looks good. The other thing is that some of you participated. We had a sidewalk meeting here about 4 weeks ago. There was more people in this room than there are here now. They were terribly interested in, and we were just trying to get, and it's an idea we had in a workshop, what should we be working on? And we came up with sidewalks 2 years ago. And we said, so we were trying to get what people wanted, enormous interest. We can't do it all because there's money that comes from the tourism board we can apply for. And that's what we were trying to do, is figure out how to use that money correctly if we could get it. So we made the applications. But my point here is more interaction and more listening to the citizens is going to get us what we need. That's where I'm headed in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
I do want to say, though, right now, there is an excellent relationship between the town and the Southern Shore Civic Association. They work very closely together on a lot of this kind of stuff. Although it's separate entities, there is a there's a great partnership that exists between the two. So it's a good question, but again, it's Civic Association actually owns it all. So, and last thing, I have talked to Klein Enterprises for anyone who's interested, and the person responsible for here used to actually work at the Senate Appropriation. So he's a good guy, I know him, and he said, they want to be a good community.
Any other comments about that?
Well, just
Mr.
one
Botanic?
other comment. The city doesn't own all the sidewalks. The associations do. CPOA owns the sidewalks
Yeah.
on the Chickasaw property.
That's right.
I don't think most citizens know that.
Yep.
Okay? And so, I mean, it's a good marriage. It really is. But I mean, we have to maintain it. One of the best things that came out of the sidewalk meeting was you guys got to maintain, you meaning the city, you got to maintain the sidewalks you own. And we've missed that. And it was a great, next council meeting, we took it up right away. Okay? So my point is we need input. That's what we like.
Thank you, sir. Well, I believe we've come to our end of our time in terms of our questions. Thank you for making very good responses and sharing your ideas. Now we have the opportunity to hear your closing remarks, and we will go in reverse order from our opening statements. So, Mr. Botanic, you have the opportunity to have the first closing remark.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight and the other citizens in the town, and to the League of Women's Voters for doing that. How many minutes do I have? It won't be like TV. My whole goal is to listen intently to the comments and concerns of all Southern Shores residents and property owners. I promise to weigh all factors so that I can make the most informed decision possible for the good of the community. This is not easy. It's not always easy, but everyone has a right to their opinion. I also think the town needs to plan for the next 10 years. That's part of the land use plan, and even think past that as well. And it was a great opportunity to be able to work with the land use plan and to work on it. Planning has to take into account the new land use plans and ways to keep the vision of the town in concert with modern times. We have to keep that in mind all the time. I want to ensure we have a safe, healthy, and vibrant community of volunteers that work closely with the SSCA, the CPOA, and we do have a diverse and vibrant citizenship from many walks of life in this town. And I think we can take even more advantage of the cultures that have come from all over the world who are here in this town today. I'll listen intently. I take concerns and comments into bearing and make the most informed decisions possible. One of the things I told the council when I was appointed, as we had to write up our thing, they said, what do people say about you? And I'll tell you what my colleagues tell you about it. What you see is what you get. People I've worked with over my lifetime, they say what you see is what you get. My friends say the same thing. I'm plain spoken. I have integrity, and I'll do everything I can to make sure. I make mistakes, just ask my wife. And I will do everything I can to correct those mistakes, but plain spoken, and I'll be a good representative and represent the needs of this town and the citizens of the town. And I consider it a privilege to be able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Botanic. Our next closing statement will be made by Mr. Garasino.
Thank you. I'd first like to thank everyone for coming. Appreciate seeing everybody, the league, and Linda, especially you for moderating this. You did an excellent job. Thank you. And my friends here at the table. Thank you. As Mark said, I am too. You see what you get. I am who I am. I have that New York rough accent. Sometimes people think I'm mad at them, but I'm not. Everybody just so happens that us New Yorkers sound like we are. Although I haven't lived there since 1977, so you'd think the thing would go away, right? So anyway, I believe in civic responsibility. I believe in working with as many people as you can, listening to whoever has an opinion. And look, you can't fix everybody's issue, but you can at least try to get, as Mark said, and I agree, make the best possible decision on the facts and on, what people believe. I think if elected, I'm going to maintain sort of an open door policy too. If someone wants to contact me, they should be able to contact me. So people can have my phone number and call me if they'd like. So anyway, I thank everybody for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garrisino. Our next closing remarks will be by Mr. Neal.
And thank you all again for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed this little get together and chat. One thing I love about local government, it's a lot more civil than some of the other levels of government. Watch.
Yeah.
None of us were talking over each other or yelling or trying to score points. And I think you've got an admirable set of choices up here. I would like to just humbly ask that you send me up for another 4 years. I really am eager to serve. I like serving. I like giving back to the community that I was born in, raised my kids in. My grandparents passed away, and this is important and somewhat emotional to me at times. And I love this town. I mean, I worked most of my adult life to get back into it. So, and I'm happy that I'm here. And I'm the architecture, the charisma of the town. It's been something that I felt deeply for a very long time, and it's something that I always tried to get back to. And I mean, here I am. I like to be an open book too. Sometimes I like to say too much, get myself in trouble. It's probably my weakest point, is try to be frank. But I've learned a little bit in the 4 years that sometimes you got to let things play out and not charge at it. So thank you all for coming, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, other candidates, great discussion. I think the one thing in the future that I could maybe provide a unique service to the town, and that is, I've written a lot of futuristic scenarios. I've done for the United States, the entire United States Army, universities, mid-sized corporations, even the food pantry here on a pro bono basis. I've had the cover story in Futurist magazine. If you tell a futuristic story of where the town wants to be 10 years from now, people can identify with it. Cognitively, it's very difficult to go to a more of an abstract strategic plan. And no offense, the land use plan is a legal requirement, you got to do it, but take that and then translate it into a story and tell it through the eyes of a citizen in Southern Shores. So in other words, moderate something like that in a workshop and get the cumulative neuroses of all the citizens and put it together, and then actually try to, use that as a planning function besides all the other legal requirements that you have, and get everybody behind it besides some other abstract concept. So words have meaning. You can take that and you can put it into a video, you can do a slideshow, whatever it is, but those kinds of things motivate people in a town. I'd like to thank my wife. She does a lot for the community here, a hell of a lot more volunteer basis than I do. And she's been a great supporter. I think sunshine is the best policy. So anything should be open and transparent in governmental processes. I'll be humble and I will listen. On my campaign signs, you'll see it says, listen, assess options, and then act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. May we give a round of applause to this? Thank you. These were just excellent responses and great questions. Thank you to all the audience for being here and to sharing your questions. We also want to thank the town of Southern Shores for giving us the use of this meeting room and for videotaping the forum. We'll be posting the video on our website, which is lwvdarenc.org, and on our YouTube page. The Dare County Current TV channel will broadcast the forum. They will also, you can check their website for the dates and times as to when you can watch it. I'll now turn this meeting back over to Laura Lai, and she is our forum coordinator this evening.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was great, great forum. I have a few things I want to tell you about. Do you all know about Vote 411? If you don't, you should. It is the league's online voter guide that is another way for you to place your vote with knowledge that you're picking the right candidates. Vote 411 is a one-stop shop website that has all kinds of information, including responses from your candidates on a variety of different topics that you can formalize and firm up your election choices. I am really pleased to tell you that all 4 of tonight's candidates have already completed their Vote 411 invitations, and the thing is, it's not live yet. It won't be live until early voting date, which is October 19th. But keep that in mind. We have information on the back about Vote 411. It's a real good help for you. We have future scheduled forums. We have, guess what? This is not the only one. All 6 towns this year have contested elections. And there's a card in the back if you want to go to 5 more of these. There's Manio tomorrow night, Kill Devil Hills on Wednesday, Nag's Head on Thursday, Kitty Hawk next Tuesday, the 10th, and Duck is next Thursday, the 12th. If you didn't catch all that, there's a card on the back that has all that information. On the back of it also has information about early voting dates, as well as last day to send in an absentee ballot. And by the way, last day to register to vote. We have register to vote forms out back in the table out there. Absentee ballot request forms are also back there. So anything to help you vote, you check it out in the back, and perhaps you'll find something you can use. Something is going to change this year, and that is that when you go to vote, you are going to be asked for a photo ID in order to vote. And so also on this card, on the flip side, we have many of the acceptable forms of ID. You have to know that when you go to vote this year, whether it's early voting or it's the day of voting on November 7th, you'll have to bring an ID with photo. The most common ones, I think, are probably the North Carolina driver's license, the North Carolina non-driver ID card, passport. But there's a whole lot of other options that you could use. And this year as well, the boards of election throughout the state will be issuing photo IDs if you go there and don't have one of the other acceptable forms of ID. So it's going to be a change for everybody. But if everybody knows, tell your friends about the voter ID need this year. Let's see. Last day, well, all the information that I just mentioned is on this card, so grab one on the way out. And Election Day is Tuesday, November the 7th. And we encourage you to join us. We have applications for membership on the back table as well. Surprise, surprise. And I encourage you to join us as we strive to defend democracy and empower voters. Thank you for coming.